Where is the mystery, might I ask? There are several unexplainable things about the case. First, how came he on the Scotch express, which leaves at 6, and does not stop at Pegram? Second, the ticket examiners at the terminus would have turned him out if he showed his season ticket, and all the tickets sold for the Scotch express on the 21st are accounted for. Third, how could the murderer have escaped? Fourth, the passengers in the 2 compartments on each side of the one where the body was found heard no scuffle and no shot fired. Are you sure the Scotch express on the 21st did not stop between London and Brewster? Now that you mention the fact, it did. It was stopped by signal just outside of Pegram. There was a few moments' pause when the line was reported clear, and it went on again. This frequently happens, as there is a branch line beyond Pegram. Mr. Sherlaw Kombs pondered for a few moments, smoking his pipe silently. I presume you wish the solution in time for tomorrow's paper? Bless my soul, no. The editor thought if you evolved a theory in a month, you would do well. My dear sir, I do not deal with theories, but with facts. If you can make it convenient to call here tomorrow at 8 a.m., I will give you the full particulars early enough for the first edition. There is no sense in taking much time over so simple an affair as the Pegram case. Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Scribbings was too much astonished to return the greeting. He left in a speechless condition, and I saw him go up the street with his hat still in his hand. Sherlaw Kombs relapsed into his old lounging attitude, with his hands clasped behind his head. The smoke came from his lips in quick puffs at first, then at longer intervals. I saw he was coming to a conclusion, so I said nothing. Finally, he spoke in his most dreamy manner. I do not wish to seem to be rushing things at all, Watson, but I am going out tonight on the Scotch express. Would you care to accompany me? Bless me, I cried, glancing at the clock. You haven't time. It's after 5 now. Ample time, Watson, ample, he murmured, without changing his position. I give myself a minute and a half to change slippers and dressing gown for boots and coat, 3 seconds for hat, 25 seconds to the street, 42 seconds waiting for a hansom, and then 7 minutes at the terminus before the express starts. I shall be glad of your company. I was only too happy to have the privilege of going with him. It was most interesting to watch the workings of so inscrutable a mind. As we drove under the lofty iron roof of the terminus, I noticed a look of annoyance passed over his face. We are 15 seconds ahead of our time, he remarked, looking at the big clock. I dislike having a miscalculation of that sort occur. The great Scotch express stood ready for its long journey. The detective tapped one of the guards on the shoulder. You have heard of the so-called Pegram mystery, I presume? Certainly, sir. It happened on this very train, sir. Really? Is the same carriage still on the train? Well, yes, sir, it is, replied the guard, lowering his voice, but of course, sir, we have to keep very quiet about it. People wouldn't travel in it else, sir. Doubtless. Do you happen to know if anybody occupies the compartment in which the body was found? A lady and gentleman, sir. I put 'em in myself, sir. Would you further oblige me, said the detective, deftly slipping half a sovereign into the hand of the guard, by going to the window and informing them in an off-hand, casual sort of way that the tragedy took place in that compartment? Certainly, sir. We followed the guard, and the moment he had imparted his news there was a suppressed scream in the carriage. Instantly a lady came out, followed by a florid-faced gentleman, who scowled at the guard. We entered the now empty compartment, and Kombs said, "We would like to be alone here until we reach Brewster." "I'll see to that, sir," answered the guard, locking the door. When the official moved away, I asked my friend what he expected to find in the carriage that would cast any light on the case. "Nothing," was his brief reply. "Then why do you come?" "Merely to corroborate the conclusions I have already arrived at." "And might I ask what those conclusions are?" "Certainly," replied the detective, with a touch of lassitude in his voice. "I beg to call your attention, first, to the fact that this train stands between two platforms, and can be entered from either side. Any man familiar with the station for years would be aware of that fact. This shows how Mr. Kipson entered the train just before it started.' 'But the door on this side is locked,' I objected, trying it. 'Of course, but every season ticket holder carries a key. This accounts for the guard not seeing him, and for the absence of a ticket. Now let me give you some information about the influenza. The patient's temperature rises several degrees above normal, and he has a fever. When the malady has run its course, the temperature falls to 3/4 of a degree below normal. These facts are unknown to you, I imagine, because you are a doctor.' I admitted such was the case. 'Well, the consequence of this fall in temperature is that the convalescent's mind turns towards thoughts of suicide. Then is the time he should be watched by his friends. Then was the time Mr. Barry Kipson's friends did not watch him. You remember the 21st, of course? No? It was a most depressing day, fog all round and mud underfoot. Very good. He resolves on suicide. He wishes to be unidentified if possible, but forgets his season ticket. My experience is that a man about to commit a crime always forgets something. But how do you account for the disappearance of the money? The money has nothing to do with the matter. If he was a deep man, and knew the stupidness of Scotland Yard, he probably sent the notes to an enemy. If not, they may have been given to a friend. Nothing is more calculated to prepare the mind for self-destruction than the prospect of a night ride on the Scotch Express, and the view from the windows of the train as it passes through the northern part of London is particularly conducive to thoughts of annihilation. What became of the weapon? That is just the point on which I wish to satisfy myself. Excuse me for a moment.' Mr. Sherlaw Kombs drew down the window on the right-hand side, and examined the top of the casing minutely with a magnifying glass. Presently he heaved a sigh of relief, and drew up the sash. 'Just as I expected,' he remarked, speaking more to himself than to me. 'There is a slight dent on the top of the window frame. It is of such a nature as to be made only by the trigger of a pistol falling from the nerveless hand of a suicide. He intended to throw the weapon far out of the window, but had not the strength. It might have fallen into the carriage. As a matter of fact, it bounced away from the line, and lies among the grass about 10 feet 6 inches from the outside rail. The only question that now remains is where the deed was committed, and the exact present position of the pistol reckoned in miles from London, but that fortunately is too simple to even need explanation.' 'Great heavens, Sherlaw!' I cried. 'How can you call that simple? Seems to me impossible to compute.' We were now flying over northern London, and the great detective leaned back with every sign of ennui, closing his eyes. At last he spoke wearily. 'It is really too elementary, Watson, but I am always willing to oblige a friend. I shall be relieved, however, when you are able to work out the ABC of detection for yourself, although I shall never object to helping you with the words of more than 3 syllables. Having made up his mind to commit suicide, Kipson naturally intended to do it before he reached Brewster, because tickets are again examined at that point. When the train began to stop at the signal near Pegram, he came to the false conclusion that it was stopping at Brewster. The fact that the shot was not heard is accounted for by the screech of the air brake added to the noise of the train. Probably the whistle was also sounding at the same moment. The train, being a fast express, would stop as near the signal as possible. The air brake will stop a train in twice its own length. Call it 3 times in this case. Very well. At 3 times the length of this train from the signal post towards London, deducting half the length of the train, as this carriage is in the middle, you will find the pistol.' 'Wonderful!' I exclaimed. 'Commonplace,' he murmured. At this moment the whistle sounded shrilly, and we felt the grind of the air brakes. 'The Pegram signal again!' cried Kombs, with something almost like enthusiasm. 'This is indeed luck. We will get out here, Watson, and test the matter.'